right, welcome back to our KOTOR 2 companion journeys. We have made our way through pretty much the whole crew of the Ebon Hawk on our second trip around here. Everyone's come on board to help Meetra Surik on their journey, but we forgot someone, Cassia, and I don't know if we really forgot him because we're doing these in twos, and there's an odd number of companions, so one was going to get left out, and unfortunately, that someone was Mandalore in our story, but that's okay because I think that this ties in pretty good. Cassius, you're gonna have to stick with me. So today we're gonna be talking about Canderous. We're gonna be talking about two of our villains, Darth Sion and Darth Nihilus. And the way that I look at this is they were all three at some point kind of enemies of our protagonist, Meetra Surik.
Oh, that is interesting. I didn't really think of that.
Yeah, and that's how I'm justifying putting these three together here for our KOTOR 2 companion journeys. So, yeah, we've got the two Sith Lords. You know, obviously we're fighting them in the game. Then we also have Mandalore, Canderous, in the game as well, but not fighting him anymore. Canderous is I don't want to say come to his senses, right? But he's gonna let bygones be bygones. He's appreciated the fact that Revan was good at fighting, and he appreciates that Meetra Surik is pretty stand up. He's going to help us on our way. But who is Mandalore? What do we know about this character when we go to Duxon and meet this guy?
So I don't believe that Mandalore the Preserver, he never takes his helmet off, but I think there is like a in the within the game you can kind of like there is data for Canderous without his helmet, and he's never
Mm-hmm.
actually I don't think he's ever actually named as Canderous, but like he is Canderous, you know.
Right. Yeah.
And like in KOTOR 1, like Canderous was not like a standout character for me, but like kind of with the context of KOTOR 2, I think he has one of the more interesting arcs in the KOTOR saga that I think he benefits from being in KOTOR 1 and KOTOR 2 and kind of like having a foot in the backstory of KOTOR.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned, yeah, he's kind of just coming along for the ride, basically. In KOTOR 1, right? He basically uses us to get off the planet and decides to go with us. He's definitely more pivotal in KOTOR 2. And then I would say, I don't know how you feel, but I think that Canderous is the highlight of the Revan novel, for sure, in my eyes, at least, anyways. And you know, that novel, I guess, gives us a little bit of insight as to how Canderous got to rule back over this tribe of Mandalorians. So Mandalore, the Preserver, which I guess is a pretty good name, because I think he's kind of preserving the factions and reuniting the Mandalorians, the different kind of sects and tribes and stuff like that, I guess. But who is Canderous? Human from Mandalore, fought in the Mandalorian Wars, of course, and then after they lost the war to Darth Revan and crew. I went to be a mercenary on Terrace. Eventually, like I said, jumps on the Ebon Hawk before the planet blows up, goes with Revan and goes off with him in the novel to go find that mask, gets it, puts it on, and boom. Now we're into KOTOR 2 timeline. And Ordo, at least, is in canon now, the planet. So maybe Canderous Ordo is one step closer to being canonized. I don't know for sure, but Ordo definitely is. And yeah, so rolling Mandalorians on Duxon, and that's where we basically crash land because that's what the Ebon Hawk does in KOTOR 2. It crash lands on basically all the planets. So that's where we go. We meet him, and he's going to give us a safe passage to Onderon.
Yeah, and even though like in the menu, it kind of shows like Canderous more like on the dark side of things. Like I kind of think like he's kind of like the Han Solo of the KOTOR trilogy. Like
Hmm,
in A New Hope, you kind of just see like Han is like self-interested. He just worries about himself, you know, like Solo.
right.
Um,
Hmm.
but then you kind of like see there's more to Han and he saves the day. Um, and then like I kind of think like maybe it's not like explicit in the Knights of the Old Republic game, but I think he does kind of grow. Like And in our proposed movie adaptation that's never happening, cinematic universe, like KOTOR 1, we would kind of see Canderous' growth, you know?
Hmm.
And what I like about his role in Knights of the Old Republic too is he's loyal to Revan. He's kind of able to overcome like the Mandalorian Wars and make peace with someone who was literally like leading the enemy. Like, and he's not the aggressor in KOTOR 2. He's just trying to save and preserve his people, and I think that's honorable.
Yeah, and I think they do a really good job in KOTOR too of kind of, you know, showing Canderous as Mandalore the Preserver is sort of this more peaceful character. Of course, it's a video game thing when you're on Duxon, and you have to basically gain enough kind of favor with him that he's going to fly you off of Onderon. But I think that that's good. It's kind of like a test of kind of the character of Meetra Surik, right? He's gone off. He's shown his respect to Revan as kind of this warring person, but now that Mandalore is kind of through that phase of his life, and he's taking on more of this, you know, this uniter type of a role to see if Meetra Surik really, has that capabilities in her, right? Is she still just, some person that's ready to go to war and wage wars and blow up entire planets full of people, or has she kind of moved on as well? Is she really able to be helpful and unify? And I think that that is kind of a neat, obviously, like I said, game mechanism, but it's an interesting way to tell that story and see how kind of Canderous' journey is going to mesh with Meetra Surik's journey, so to speak.
Yeah, it's interesting because like we see Canderous like he kind of I don't know, allies and then befriends, maybe befriend is a strong word, but I kind of think he kind of comes to respect Revan and the Exile, like he is allied with them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like literally the only person he didn't ally with was Malik, and like that was kind of like the triumvirate. Mandalorian Wars was Revan, Malik, and the Exile. So
Mm-hmm.
he allied with two of them. So it's just like the Force is like, let's play with Canderous and see like and just like force him to cross paths with people who literally were his enemy.
Right. Yeah, it keeps bouncing around there. And yeah, you said it pretty well there. If it's not necessarily like a friendship or kind of thing. I have written down here partnership is kind of the way that I saw it. And kind of the role I think that he's playing in Meetra Surik's hero heroine's journey is as this kind of a symbol of partnership and of forgiveness and things, right? Because they were at war, and Meetra Surik is basically just running back across his path, and he's showing her, he's giving her aid and shelter, and able to forgive her, and like I said, giving her clear passage, and then ultimately reunites these clans as Mandalore the Preserver, and comes back in then at the very end to basically help save the day, help take out one of the other enemies, and really come to the aid of Meetra Surik as kind of the Mandalorians and the Jedi are able to come together at the end after being at war for so long. So I think that that's pretty neat, and I think that that's a pretty good kind of character portrayal of Canderous, like you said, because we don't get a lot of his stuff in KOTOR 1. He's kind of the forgotten ally through that section, at least kind of in my eyes. But here in KOTOR 2 plays a much more important role, I think, to our main character.
Yeah, he definitely has more of an arc in KOTOR, and I kind of wonder like if KOTOR was ever adapted into like a movie or a trilogy, like I kind of think they would have to borrow some of his arc from KOTOR 2 just to kind of make him more than one note, one dimensional. Um, and people love Mandalorians, people are getting more familiar with them. So it would be
Mm-hmm.
interesting to see kind of like the Mandalorians in a different time in their history. So I think storytellers would have fun with that.
Yeah, absolutely, because there's a lot of history and lore and things, and able to build back up kind of this larger, quote unquote civilization of Mandalorians, and how spread out they were, and how warring they were, and interfighting and stuff like that. I think would be interesting to see adapted out. And what would be interesting to see adapted out too is what happens after KOTOR 2. I mentioned the Revan novel for Canderous, but all that stuff with him basically happens kind of and I guess in the lead up more or less to KOTOR 2. So what do you think he's getting up to after the fact? Is he going back to Mandalore, back to Duxon? What's he getting up to?
Yeah, I kind of wish there was a KOTOR 3 because I think they could have followed that through. But I mean, like, they're still Mandalorians, so I think he kind of succeeded in kind of reclaiming their former glory in their former home, and but not being the aggressors, just kind of preserving them, and I think maybe in the back of his mind, even though I don't consider the Revan novel canon, uh, it's kind of like maybe in the back of his mind he'd always wonder what happened to Revan, but
Mhm.
maybe he'd cross paths with Karth and Bastila, and like they would let bygones be bygones, like they're able to sometimes maybe get pie together.
That's right. Absolutely. Definitely going to get some pie together. That's pretty close to what I had here. I said that obviously is going to be kind of rolling over Mandalore as these factors factions start to come back together and things like that. So that's kind of obviously the point where we're leaving him at the story. It's interesting to think about what the Mandalorians might do kind of then in a quote unquote time of peace. There are these people of war, but it seems like maybe Canderous can teach them new ways to not always be at war, right? To be ready to go to war, to be willing to go to war, but to not go to war is kind of this great restraint, and maybe that's what he's trying to preserve there is Mandalorian ways and cultures without you know necessarily throwing them right into the fire. Speaking of fire, I said that he's probably also off having barbecues with Big Z and Mission somewhere, maybe some besties. I don't know, doing some stuff like that. But I think Canderous is a pretty fun time. You made a really good kind of comparison to how he was portrayed. Similar maybe to Han Solo, but deep down, I think that there's a lot of connection here between uh, Canderous and kind of the other members of the Ebon Hawk, both in KOTOR and KOTOR 2. So I think that he would be a willing ally to come back to the aid of pretty much any of the characters in time of need.
Yeah. And like I just kind of see him being like a really good friend with Juhani. So, which is something we talked about in our KOTOR cinematic adaptation that's not happening cinematic universe. So, yeah.
The KCU, the KOTOR cinematic universe. Absolutely. But there's one more important thing about Canderous that we need to take care of before we move on to our two Dark Lords here of KOTOR 2. What kind of pie is Canderous going to be getting? Journey is over. It's time to relax. Sit down, have something good to eat. So what do you think, Cassia?
I had some feedback. Um, some people said something hearty like meat pie with steak. Like that kind of could
Okay.
seem like he'd barbecue, like kind of have something like that has protein so he can like, hit the gym, and go to war, or, handle Nihilus's ship, because I think
Mm-hmm.
he is programmed to go to Nihilus's ship, like no matter what. So,
Yeah.
um, and then another person says like beef pot pie. It's kind of a recurring theme. Um,
Yeah.
but Dennis
Okay.
said Canderous would go for rhubarb, and I'm like, oh, that it's kind of like it's like a
Interesting.
rule of thirds, you expect like something meaty and then it's like rhubarb. And
Okay.
I
Okay.
just thought it was funny. But for me personally, I think KOTOR 2, he'd be feeling more connected with his Mandalorian heritage and kind of like feeling like he's on track for his life's purpose. Like which is kind of preserving Mandalorian culture. So I think he would be kind of making some Mandalorian uh meat pies like as a full meal.
Okay. Yeah, some ancient Mandalorian cookbook he finds when he found the helmet. Maybe there was like a recipe tucked inside of it, and he decided to make that. So I like that. I like that. I said that Canderous is a full-fledged Mandalorian. He's got the helmet now. The armor would be very proud of him. He doesn't take it off during the entirety of the game, so we never get a good look at Canderous's face there. So helmeted, it's going to be hard to eat a pie. So I'm going with a protein shake with a straw. That's how he's gonna take it in. So yeah, so he can hit the gym, he can still do all of the things, but I do like maybe they're having some sort of after they take over Nihilus' ship, maybe there is a some like big Mandalorian sort of Viking type celebration, right, where the meat is flowing and pies are being consumed, and yeah, hopefully there's some sort of delicious Mandalorian pie that I don't even know about.
Hmm. Yeah, I demand a Mandalorian cookbook uh that will intersect with the plot of Mandalorian season 4. So, yeah.
That's right. Cooking with Bo-Katan. Yeah, so that is Canderous. Really good ally. Former enemy turned ally, but this is a an enemy turned enemy. But it's one that we're going to spare, and I think that that is pretty good. And that is Darth Sion. So Cassia, what do we know about Darth Sion?
So he is like, I think he's kind of like older, like he's a Sith that like I think fought with Exar Kun and stuff, and like he just kind of learned how to uh turn his pain into gains, you know? Uh, kind of quoting Thor Love and Thunder there, but it's kind
I
of
love
like
it.
a negative version of that, you know,
Mm,
where it's
yeah.
like he's so afraid to die, which is kind of like what Sith are. It's like they're afraid because they're kind of selfish and they want to hold on to the physical side of things, but they
Hmm,
kind of
hmm.
don't understand the full picture like the Jedi do. Like, and Jedi turn into Force ghosts, you know? But what he did is turn himself into a zombie. Like, it's like he gets stabbed through the heart, like he's still alive, you know? So he's very freaky.
He is very freaky. Yeah, Darth Sion, aka the Lord of Pain. He was a Sith marauder who fought for Exar Kun's Sith Empire in the Sith War. So good call there on that one. He was struck down. Still lives on, I guess. He also was on Korriban and fought alongside of Revan and Malik. But when that fell, so did he. And then next up was the Triumvirate here with Darth Freya and Darth Nihilus. So yeah, Scion has been around for a long time, but always seems to be kind of the follower and never the leader in these groups, right? Following Exar Kun, following Revan and Malik, and then ultimately really following Darth Treya, who kind of takes him on as an apprentice, and then becomes 1/3 of this wing. But you never really got the feeling, at least I didn't, that Darth Sion was really up to the same level as Nihilus and Treya here within the Triumvirate.
Yeah, Scion reminds me of Malik a bit. It's kind of like he's more of the brute. He's kind of like the hammer rather than the scalpel, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Um, kind of like a blunt instrument. Um, and then, yeah, like he kind of is a tragic figure. He's been alive for so long, but like really, like, what is his purpose? Is he like creating like Sith prophecies or doctrine? Like, it kind of just seems like he is so afraid of like letting go that he's like literally like a flesh and blood zombie, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and just kind of like hurting other people. He's not really building things, he's kind of just destroying things. We kind of see him like throughout the game, kind of like he's the Sith we see first, uh, like on the Harbinger. Do we see him on Paragus as well, or is it just mostly like the Harbinger?
I believe we just see him on the Harbinger. I don't think we see him actually on Paragus. We see him there because that's and then Kreia goes off to fight him and loses her arm there in that fight. But we never really see that, so we don't really know how that goes down. And I think, to my knowledge, at least kind of doing some research on this, basically, that was Kreia saying to leave this alone. She's mine for me to deal with. You get out of here. But Sion always seems kind of tormented by that, and I don't know if it's because of him feeling like he's under the kind of the influence of Kreia slash Treya, or that he really just doesn't like Meetra Surik, or what that is, or if it's just the anguish of keeping himself alive through all this time is getting the best of him. But yeah, he pops up a couple times, and the first time there on the Harbinger.
Yeah, it's kind of like in season one of Avatar: The Last Airbender. It kind of seems like Nihilus is the Zhao, Admiral Zhao, but uh, Prince Zuko is a little bit like the Scion. So it's kind of like you see Zuko a bit more, but he's not really the big bad of that season. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I guess that makes Kreia the Fire Lord, I think, but
Mm.
um, yeah.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, I love that. Kreia the Fire Lord. That sounds pretty intense. I love it. I love it. So yeah, Darth Sion. So what kind of journey do you think that they have here? You mentioned, that we see him kind of first there at the Harbinger. I think we see him again on Korriban, and then ultimately at the Trey Academy on Malachor. Do you think that Sion has any sort of journey throughout this? Because he is interesting in the fact that we do get to have some dialogue with them, which is not something that you're always getting with your villains.
Yeah, I think his arc, I'm saying arc in quotes, like was a little trimmed down because they kind of just had to get KOTOR 2 out when it did. So like maybe he would have had a little bit more of a complete story um in like the full KOTOR 2, the modded version.
Hmm.
But he's kind of like, kind of like when you have like lots of characters in something, like sometimes one isn't developed as much. And I think like Sion kind of suffers from that. But he kind of has a little bit of an arc where it's like I think he kind of like I think he's still allied with the dark side, but he does die. Like in a way, I think he is kind of accepting death, you know?
Hmm.
Um, and like he does kind of have like a weird fixation on the exile. Like he's like, I think you're beautiful, like kind of like the Phantom of the Opera with Christine, and probably the exile is like hitting the panic button, you know? It's like, nope,
Right.
shut it down. Shut it down.
Shut it down.
But so what do you see his arc as?
Yeah, not a ton of arc. Yeah, you definitely have kind of that weird infatuation that he has with Meetra Surik as you go through, and you have kind of these interactions with him. And like I said, I don't know if that stems as much as he's just very into her, even though she's not that into him, or if it's stemming from kind of this feeling of um, inadequacy towards kind of his master or mentor has taken a keen eye to Meetra Surik, so maybe it's a bit of jealousy. He's given up a lot. He's basically been under kind of underneath of three different sets of uh, Sith lords, I guess, as it were, to be passed over again, and he's holding on to all of this pain and all this rage just to keep himself alive, and he just keeps kind of being put to the back burner. So maybe it's part of that. Maybe he sees some of what he gave up when he first fell and decided to hang on to that anger. Um, maybe he sees some jealousy or resentment or admiration in Meetra Surik from that stance, because I suppose Meetra Surik could have gone down a very similar path as Darth Sion, if she really kind of let the rage and pain from what she did get the best of her. So I think that that's what Darth Sion kind of represents to her. He's symbolizing, the need to forgive yourself. If you do bad things, you can't keep holding on to that. You have to forgive yourself and be able to move on. So I think that's really kind of the journey that Sion is going on. It's kind of this self discovery and being able to, like I said, forgive yourself and move on. You can't dwell on the things that you did wrong. You can only try to make them right and do them right the next time.
Yeah. In a college textbook adaptation, I would like a whole lot of like literary and character analysis on kind of like what you said, you know? So,
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So Darth Sion ends up, succumbing to his fate there. He finally is able to let go of kind of that pain and anguish and leave his mortal body. We don't know if he moved on in any sort of sense to any kind of light side thing. Probably not. I think he's just able to move on to give up the ways of the Sith and let himself go and be at peace, which I think is nice for him to be able to move on. But before that final confrontation, maybe after he left Korriban, he went back onto his ship and he said, "I should probably have a piece of pie on my way to Malachor." So, what kind of pie do you think that Darth Sion had on his way to our final encounter?
um, here was some feedback I got. Someone said Scion doesn't eat.
Okay, okay,
Someone says Darth Sion would like Oreo. I'm like, you know what? Like,
interesting.
I could maybe see that. Like, it's a good flavor, kind of have some light and darkness in it. Like, and then someone said, oh, as Dennis said, Scion would go for pecan.
Okay.
I struggled with this. I kind of remember my dog, and it's like sometimes I would have the razor, like my razor, like in the bathroom,
Hmm.
and sometimes I would find my dog like chewing on the razor and licking it, and it's like,
Oh,
what? Like, is this not destroying your tongue or your teeth or your gums? And it's like somehow no, but like kind
wow.
of I was like, would Darth Sion like kind of just like lick a knife and like imagine a symphony
Mm,
or a flavor or I don't know. So I'm just gonna go with
wow.
what I like, which is Oreo,
Okay.
and just hope that he wouldn't like chew on knives or something.
Well, that's what Atten says. Mister plays with vibrosaurs or something. He calls them right, or vibro knives or
Yeah,
whatever,
sleeps
vibroblades.
sleeps with knives or something.
Yeah, something like that. So two things. So maybe your dog is like the dog lord of pain. That's kind of
Oh,
amazing. I like that. I like that.
oh,
I like the Oreo pie because now I'm imagining that like Darth Sion is like the cookie parts of the Oreo, and that his pain is that cream filling in the middle that's holding it together. So an Oreo is literally a cookie of pain, I guess maybe. So I like that. I said that Darcion is having some lemon pie, because it's sour. So he's going to have that. It's just like the pain. He's having a sour pie, but then when he lets go and lets himself go, maybe it can turn into a lemon meringue pie. Get a little bit of sweetness there onto it,
oh.
after he's able to let go of his being sad all the time and in pain. So that is Darcion, which leaves us with our next big bad. That is everyone's favorite, coolest mask in the game, maybe. I don't know for sure, but that is Darth Nihilus. Cassia, what do we know about Darth Nihilus?
Everyone loves his mask. Um, it is an iconic mask. Um, it was funny because when I was first playing KOTOR 2, my dad saw the cover for KOTOR 2 and is like, this looks satanic. And I'm like, no, it's just like Star Wars. It's just like a different mask. It's kind of like iconic based upon, kind of like No Face, isn't
Mm-hmm.
that, oh, it's not Howl's Moving Castle, Spirited Away, right?
Yeah, Spirited Away.
Yeah.
Yep.
So the story for Darth Nihilus is that he was on Malachor, I believe, and he's kind of like a mirror, reverse mirror, like a mimesis of the Exile. Because when the mass shadow generator went off, it like killed a lot of people. The Exile survived, but they kind of became a wound in the Force, and like Darth Nihilus was a bit like that, where it's just like he was empty and he just needed to consume the Force to survive. And that's kind of where the meme comes from, where it's like he ate a planet, you know?
Hmm.
He just has to consume, you know? And that's kind of like maybe like it kind of reminds me of like Kronos from Greek mythology, like the Titan Kronos, like
Hmm.
time consumes everything, you know, like maybe this is like a dark instance of the Force. It's like it consumes everything, like it leaves death in its wake, you know. Eventually Darth Nihilus like comes across the lone survivor of the planet KOTOR, who is Visa Smar, and kind of like Stockholm syndromes her into like becoming his Sith apprentice, you know,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
eventually Visa Smar allies herself with the Exile, and the Exile comes onto the Ravager with Visa Smar and Canderous Ordo, and in my mind, they succeed. I don't want Visa Smart to sacrifice herself anymore. I'm like, you can live for yourself and be happy, okay? Like, go to a beach, have fun, have pie, you know,
Yeah.
live a good life. You deserve it, you know, and like, so I don't really know if like Nihilus has an arc, which is why, like, in an adaptation, whether it's a textbook or a movie or a TV show, like, I would probably nerf Nihilus, like, and
Mm.
upset, like, some of the major fanboys, you know, and be like,
Yeah.
yeah, Mask is cool, but you know what else is cool? A character and dialogue and character arcs. So I don't really
Yeah.
know what his character arc is, but he dies.
He
And that's
he,
kind of where,
he does.
yeah,
That's an arc. I guess it's like a straight line straight to dead.
yeah,
Yeah, Nihilus is I want to say is interesting because I don't really think that Nihilus is that interesting. I do think that his mask is pretty cool. I do think that it is a cool mask.
yeah.
But I kind of think that it's interesting that there's some like mirror image of Meetra Surik out there, right? Because they both basically survived kind of this explosion more or less, and he became, kind of this wound in the Force who basically just had this like ravenous hunger for the Force, which was going to, basically he could snuff it all out. He was going to just keep doing it until it was all gone. Whereas Meetra Surik, kind of was on the other side, and she's, through the story, at least that we're playing, if you play the light side playthrough, trying to basically restore the Force and preserve it. So they're kind of like flip sides of the coin in that sense. Um, to the best of my knowledge, I think Nihilus was found by Darth Treya, and recruited to join kind of this triumvirate. So even though it was threefold, really it's Treya that's kind of pulling the strings on Sion and pulling the strings on Darth Nihilus. I mean, she even sets him up basically to go start the bombardment of Telos, which gets us to our final battle. Is she's willing to do that? So I think he's kind of a pawn for her, and she's using him as a tool basically to get rid of the Force in the galaxy, which is one of kind of her ultimate goals there, before turning her attention onto Meetra Surik. Um, yeah, so we meet him on board a ship in Telos, and that's about it. You see Darth Nihilus a couple of times in the game, just from the command center of that, and you just get the vibe that he's not particularly good. But I don't think that he has any sort of kind of impact on Meetra Surik's role. Really, it's more of a character that introduces us to Visas Mar and gives her a little bit more of an arc to go through. You brought up the good point that you would maybe nerf him from a from an adaptation, be it whatever the adaptation would be. I think maybe I don't know that you have to nerf him. I think maybe Darth Nihilus and the mask could be more of like a symbol than an actual person.
Yeah.
maybe maybe that works a little bit better. I mean, I understand, because hashtag video games, so you have to have some kind of next big bad that you're fighting. But yeah, I don't. The story within KOTOR 2 for Nihilus is really pretty thin, other than is pretty cool. And I don't know if that was a fact of stuff that got cut from the game and the kind of the rush process to it. But yeah, it was just never a character that I really kind of I identified with or got a lot out of their story here. So not a lot to say. And what do they do after KOTOR 2? Nothing, because dead. But what about pies? When you're done, you know, eating entire planets worth of force energy, when you capture Visas Mar and you tell her that she's your Sith apprentice now, maybe you two sit down after a day of pillaging planets for some pie or some dessert. What's Darth Nihilus going to have? What do you think, Cassia?
Um, Marcus says just drains the flavor out of everything. The worst sampler in an ice cream sh or pie shop. Which I'm like, yeah. And someone's like, Darth Nihilus, raspberry. And
Hmm. Okay.
interesting. And then Dennis said, Nihilus, any and all the pies as long as there's 38 of them. And I was like, isn't that Baskins and Robbins thing? Haha. And he's like, I think that's 31. Actually, I changed my answer to 31 because of that. I'm like, maybe Dr. Pepper is 38. So if you learn
Oh.
anything, I'm not really a Dr. Pepper person. So,
Mm.
um, yeah, but I guess like he kind of had an arc as in like he lived, he lived in quotes, he ate and then he died. I kind of
Here
just see
lies
him as
Darth
beyond
Nihilus. He
pies.
ate and he died.
Yep.
You see him beyond pies. Well, okay. Yeah. What, elaborate. What does that mean?
No dessert for him.
Oh.
He only wants to eat the force, Maybe if there's a force, like a force flavor, he would eat that, like in pie form, but I don't know. What do you see?
No pie for me, thanks. Full on the force. I love that. Yeah. So on my little note sheet, I said force pie? Question mark. Is that a kind of pie? I don't know. Maybe he would eat every pie, because he just has an an unsalvageable hunger. Maybe if you're one with the force, right?
Yeah.
Maybe when you're baking a pie, maybe some force gets into it, like you're making it. Or maybe if you're using the force to bake the pie, like to mix your ingredients or something, maybe it gets a little bit of force energy in there, so you have to eat every pie just to make sure you get it all. I don't know. Darth Nihilus probably doesn't eat any pie. Yeah, he'd have to take his mask off, and we don't know what he looks like under there, so maybe he's not even like a person anymore after the mass
There's
shadow
nothing
generator.
there. He's just
Nothing
a
there.
mess.
It's just a spirit and a mask, and maybe that's where we should leave it. In no pie. So I don't know. Let us know at home if you think Canderous or Darth Sion or Darth Nihilus have a perfect pie flavor, or if we're totally off the mark here. If Darth Nihilus has a really sweet character arc, please tell us that, because I would love to know what it is for sure. But I don't know. That's our last kind of companion jersey. I've said that twice. That was our last companion journey here before we get into the big hitters of Kreia, and then the final one of Meetra Surik. But I think this was fun, and I always like going through these and analyzing the characters a little bit. So what do you think, Cassie? Do you have any parting thoughts here on our enemies turned friends slash enemies slash potential love interests, Darsion?
Um, it would be cool to see an expanded story for him. But I mean, sometimes when you have more than one villain, like I think Krea's the main villain, like so her side posse or Sion and Nihilus, even though they don't hang out anymore, So
Mm,
Krea's the real deal. I don't really understand Krea though, so we'll try to cover her, you know, in her all of her ineffableness, in the future.
that's right. Absolutely. So yeah, let us know what you think about this companion journey, and we'll talk to you next time. May the force be with you.
May the force be with you.